Yo, welcome back. So today we're gonna check out this video that one of my mods just sent to me. So big shout out to you, Knight. You always keep me up to date. I fucking love it. You're the goat for that. So there's an interview that Jonathan made with this Destin. I'm not sure if that's how you say it. Destin. I think that's how you say it. About Path of Exile 2. So we're gonna check that out today and see what this is all about. Introduction, regrets. Oh shit, okay. I think this is. I see a lot of chapters here. Holy crap. But yeah, let's get into it. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good jazz. I'll leave the link for this video in the description. And I hope to see you all on launch day, man.
Exile 2 Dawn of the Hunt is releasing on April 4th at 12 p.m. Pacific time on PC and console, and I can't wait. As part of its release, they did a little bit of a press tour, and I got to sit down with Jonathan Rogers to ask him about how Path of Exile 2 is doing. I've included that interview at the start, but in addition, we also had a roundtable that I am able to include as well. A huge thank you to Grinding Gear Games. I am
Sounds
very
fucking
excited about
amazing.
Dawn of the Hunt, so if you haven't watched the presentation yet, I'll be sure to upload that on the channel, and you'll probably want to check it out. That said, let's hear what he had to say. How have you been? It's been a while.
Yeah, well, like I'm doing all right. It's obviously, once again another push to get to, the Huntress out. But it certainly was not nearly as crazy as the crunch period that we had for early access. So
Yeah.
that's been a lot better.
I hope I added a little levity in chat today. It was all super serious, so yeah. So Path of Exile 2 came out. I put like 200 hours into it. It was the last thing that I did at IGN. I really, really had a good time with it.
Oh, so he. This guy is from IGN. Oh. He said it was the last thing I did at IGN, so he's not working there anymore. I really dislike IGN personally. I feel like they have sold out, and yeah, I'm not a fan.
Really,
Nice.
really liked it.
But I'll take this with
reviewed
like.
it on my personal channel. Highly recommend people get in for early access. There's some stuff at Endgame that we'll get to in a little bit that I didn't love, but you're about to have a big launch, a big new release, and I'm curious, what was the one thing you were like, I really wish we would have caught that before initial launch?
Well, I would say that
Overkill.
the thing that probably was most sad for me was that the first time someone played the Pinnacle boss,
Yeah, I knew
they
it.
killed it in like 14
I
seconds.
knew it.
And
14.
like,
Can you say
okay.
1 second?
Like we knew obviously people would find broken stuff, but it was kind of sad that that all that stuff was found before the point when people kind of got to the end game bosses and and were sort of doing all those things. So that's been like a big thing. In the presentation, we're mostly talking about new content and features, but probably one of the largest things that we didn't talk about is there's a full game rebalance in there, and the hope is that we'll be able to get to a point where it feels much more reasonable. We still want players to be able to become really broken and crazy, but at the same time, there needs to be a level of earning it, right? Like the first time you play a Pinnacle boss, you should be, it should be a protracted battle that takes you 3 or 4 minutes, and then you kill the boss, you get the loot, you get better and better, and then sure, by the time you're done with your character, it's 14 seconds to kill it, but certainly not the first time you get there.
Totally get it. Yeah, I do like melting bosses though. So
For sure.
On that, I would say my first attempt at the breach boss chest, I totally failed that. I got annihilated. My build was nowhere near able to do that in any way. I could do T16s and stuff, but I could not do that. I think I spent, I want to say like 5 to 6 minutes fighting him, and he was barely half health. So I'm wondering a little bit when he says that. Is that does he think about that in a way where he wants us, because they were saying that the dream in the Q&A from the reveal stream, he was saying the dream is for player power to be around 50k to 500k damage per second, or DPS, right? And I tried doing it with a 50k DPS character, and I don't feel like that was possible at all. I came back and did it on a monk afterwards, if I remember correctly. And the monk had like a couple 100,000 DPS. I want to say like 200,000 DPS, and even that was taking like a decent amount of evading and like being careful and hitting, finding my openings and hitting him. It was a fight. Of course, it's nothing like the Blob Mage, because the Blob Mage is so broken that it's every fight is a 1 second fight, right? Because I just off screen anything that is nearby. Like everything dies before I actually have to see any mechanics. I don't if I do Orbindar and T4 with my Blob Mage, I don't see, like, I don't have to evade any mechanics or anything, because he instantly dies. It's like one shot basically. So, but that's like 30, 40, 60 million DPS on that character, right? So I understand that that's not what they want. They don't want you to walk in there, just annihilate them with one attack, and then you never have to like evade any mechanics or see anything that's happening, right? I get that, but 5-minute fights for one boss seems just a tiny bit for an ARPG at least. It seems like a lot, in my opinion. Not crazy, but it seems like a lot, right? Because when I think about the Maven fight, for instance, the reason the Maven fight is long is because of all the different sections you have to go through, right? You kill her, then you kill the brain, then you do the memory game, then you kill her, kill the brain, do the memory game, kill her, kill the brain, do the memory game. You know what I mean? There's a bunch of time where you're not actually physically fighting or evading anything. It's just waiting for the next phase. So that's because every phase for me on my Ice Nova build, it's like 2 seconds or 3 seconds to kill them, right? I'm a little confused on the exact vision here.
Oh, for sure. I mean, look, everyone does, but the thing is, as I said, you got to earn it, right? And like, you should get that experience many times as you go through the game. Like, you have the thing where you get a new itemization level, you start melting bosses, but then there's another challenge beyond that that then ramps up the difficulty again. And so it's getting that curve right, and it is something that is incredibly difficult to get right first time in a game where you're talking about putting 100 hours into it before you even see those kinds of problems. Because it's like, obviously during testing, it's like when I'm not playing 100 hours into every testing character I make, right? It's like very hard to actually be able to assess that stuff. So you do need players to be able to see that sort of thing.
You are about to release a substantial update to Path of Exile 2. The numbers started very, very high. They've obviously tapered off. The game's been out several months now. I'm curious, what sort of blip on the map do you see this update adding to the player base?
So I think that so what I'm sort of expecting, and we've actually seen this before every time we've released Path of Exile 1 in a sort of new market or a new thing like that, is that the first release you get a huge thing. Now, obviously, that release was way bigger than we actually were expecting for for the game, right? Because I was kind of sort of expecting it to actually be smaller than a PoE 1 release, because PoE 1 is free to play and this isn't yet, right?
So, no, but the game was so good
because
looking.
Of that, I was sort of expecting it to be small, but it ended up being our largest release ever. For 020, I really would expect the numbers to be a bit lower than what they were for the initial release of Early Access. But the real test is going to come with what happens of 030, because there we would expect to see an increase over 020. So it's kind of like, you get this, and it's funny because I actually have to tell, people this frequently to have the right expectations here. You start high, you go a bit lower, and then it's up from there, right? And so that's kind of important to understand. Now, of course, there's also going to be, the early access release where it goes truly free to play, and for that, I would expect to see tremendous, crazy numbers. Given what we saw for early access. But during early access, with the things I would expect, like down for this one, then a slow trend up is what I would be hoping for.
Got it. And just to be clear, it's not going full free to play just yet.
No. So that'll be during the full release, which as I said, hoping this year. That's my every effort will go into making that schedule this year. But you never know, right? I don't want to promise anything just yet.
Yeah, well, every cent I spent on the game, I feel very, very happy. You guys actually gave me a code, and I went and bought the $40 thing anyway because
Well,
I
thank
like
you
that.
very
Like,
much.
You
whenever I like
earned
a
it.
game that much,
They earned it. That's why he did that.
gotta do it. You know. Um,
They
so
have.
I want to sort.
That's one thing I'm personally feeling when I'm playing Path of Exile 1 or Path of Exile 2. It doesn't really matter. Is the game they have provided the abilities, the design, the extreme thought through everything when it comes to mechanics and stuff in both games, honestly, um, has made me feel like they earned the money I spent, right? And this is actually no lie. Like, this is the game I've spent, well, this is the game I've spent the second most money on in my lifetime, like ever, right? The only game, the only game I've spent more on is Pokemon Go, but I played that for what 6 years, 7 years, and over 7 years, I probably spent around $1,000 on it. I would say around $1,000, right? And so far, I've spent around $300 or $400 on supporter packs for Path of Exile. If I remember correctly, I think it's around that number, right around that number, 300 to 400. And I would never spend that type of money on like Call of Duty or Diablo 4. I don't even want to spend the $70 to buy Diablo 4 because it's so bad. I don't want to spend $60 buying Call of Duty because I find it terrible. The last good Call of Duty I paid for was Black Ops 4, in my opinion. Maybe 2019 was okay, but I still feel like that was kind of a mid-tier game in comparison to Black Ops 4. So, and I really never spent any money on microtransactions in those games. I usually just bought the Ultimate Edition, and that came with like 2,500 COD points pretty much every time I bought a Call of Duty. So, at one point, I had like 13,000 COD points on my account just from buying the games, right? And yeah, I think they have earned those money, right? Because they've provided so much and it's high quality. They are very open about everything they do. They explain it. I'm just so impressed with how the communication is from their side because I'm not used to that. So I feel like they've earned every cent that I have sent their way.
Sort of reflect. It came out that Chris Wilson had departed Grinding Gear
Oh,
Games. Obviously, he helped with a lot of the workload. You're largely focused on Path of Exile 2 now. How has the team adjusted, and how has it been getting along, given that you're running two concurrent games at the same time?
Well, Chris actually hasn't been day to day involved for quite a long time, right? He was just acting as a board member for like, for quite a long time now. It hasn't like, he stepped down as a board member recently, but that was like not really like a big deal because that doesn't affect the company's day-to-day running very much.
right.
Certainly, it would have been nice to have had him continuing to work on PoE1 like over some periods of the time, but I wouldn't really say it's anything to do with the difficulty of getting PoE1 made at the same time as PoE2, because ultimately the issue there comes down to like people who are like the hard part for this is like people who really know the game really well and are able to be the kind of person who can design Exile. And that's the part where it becomes like a shortage and it's quite hard to do. Now we're sort of restructuring our team to sort of make it much more possible to run both games simultaneously. We had a very different type of like company structure during the point when PoE2 was in development separately from PoE1. But now I think it actually might be better to sort of merge people back a little bit more, reintegrate the teams more, and then that will sort of mean that like we can allocate resources to both games more correctly from what it needs right now. And so what I'm sort of hoping for ideally is we get into a situation where, it's like when we're making something that's more animation heavy in one game, we're making something that's less animation heavy in the other one. And we kind of like try to load balance things a little bit more effectively across the company. But as I said, you still need the ability to know what the game needs right now. And that's something that's very hard for most people to actually come up with. And really, there's only a few people in the company who are really good at that. And at any given time, it's really hard to say, okay, well, I just want, I don't want to lose someone forever to one project and never get them back. So I feel like that sort of merging again does need to happen. So that's a little bit, probably a bit vague, but effectively what I'm saying is, yeah, we're trying to get the company into a structure where it's possible to get both games concurrently developed like that.
As an outsider looking in, you two did seem close, so I hope you stay in touch and.
Well, 100%. I mean, I talk to him every day. I talk to him every day, all the time. It's not like there's some falling out or anything. Like we just, he's just, it's a stressful job.
Okay, that wasn't the idea I had
your
either.
original roadmap, speaking of changes, it's probably shifted a lot. What was the hardest piece to move when you realized it had to be moved?
Well, I mean, look. So the main thing is like So I assume you're talking about in terms of when the release date for early access, sorry, for coming out of early access would be.
Yeah, well, like early access, you had delays, but like, what was the one thing where you're like, we have to change this, we have to make this hard call? Was there a situation like that?
Yeah, so the hard one that really was hard for me was when we had to slip the PoE 1
yeah, I thought so. I was
release,
thinking,
because we'd promised that to the community, like 100% we had, and like I really believed that was going to be possible, and then it honestly, like, it creeped up on me in a way that was like
so
really
sad
terrible that I should have foreseen. So, but the thing is that PoE 2 with the the balance problems that we had that needed to be addressed, like we didn't feel like we were able to let PoE 2 be in a state of not getting an update as soon as possible, because of the balance issues that we had. So for that reason, we made the decision to slip PoE 1. But it was really horrible because, like, I really wanted that to happen, and it was a promise that I had made. It isn't in terms of other things, like in terms of like when the release, the final releases and that kind of thing. I'm not as worried about that because, ultimately, as long as we're delivering a good experience for players and we're fulfilling the promises we've made as far as when content happens, I'm fine with that. When the actual final ship date is kind of less important because, the players who are playing are still having a great time. So, I guess that's what's important to me, is just making sure, as I said, I'm keeping my promises and we're actually doing what I said we'd do.
Right.
Yeah, I can understand that. You kind of feel like you kind of got to bite the bullet and just say, look, it's not going to happen. Here's why. Right. I think you've done a really good job with that messaging, honestly. I think you're more open than most teams are, and it's refreshing to see.
Just said in the early, yeah.
Thank you.
I agree.
You have 100%. So many classes to choose from. A few jump out as overpowered. Some are okay. Was there a class that you feel was in need of the most TLC?
That's
Warrior?
Honestly... Sure, I mean, that's obviously the one people will say, right? Now, the funny thing is I play one-hand warrior as my playing character on production, specifically because people say it's the worst one, and I'm like, I want to be playing the thing people say is bad, in order to be able to have a good opinion about that.
It's
and
one-handed warrior and witch hunter
is,
and Shayula monk.
Part of the
they
reason
are
for
all
that is
three terrible.
The main thing is there was no big OP broken build for warrior. There just didn't happen to be anything that was completely ridiculous there. Now that the warrior will get buffs, right?
I would argue differently here. He says that there is nothing broken about the warrior build, but Rutu made a build that was so fucking broken that it got fixed like immediately in a hotfix because of it was like bricking the servers basically. So I don't know if I fully agree with that. The warrior definitely had some broken things going on. And if I remember correctly, isn't the warrior the one character that caught the most amount of nerves up until this point? I think it is.
And we've got things going on, and that'll happen. But I think that it was really in the comparison to many of the other classes that it suffered the most, because there just were things about those other classes that really led, that jumped out like very early in terms of like, oh, this thing's completely cracked and needs to be dealt with and that kind of stuff. So there's going to be a big rebalance here, as I said, and it's going to cause a lot of readjustment. I would be very interested to see how Warrior's reputation is after 020's releases. because you know, as I said, lots of changes, and it's honestly will be hard to even enumerate them all because you know it's just kind of like just expect everything you know about the balance to change, and so you know you're going to be learning what's good again and that kind of stuff.
For sure. Uh, Are you able to give us any hints about what Path of Exile 2 costs to make? Like, is it over 8 digits? Or if it's 9 digits, does that number start with a
Oh,
2?
it's definitely not 9 digits. It's you know
Okay.
it's much lower than 9 digits. I don't honestly. I don't have the figure completely to hand, but I will certainly say that we were profitable from that launch. Like the early access launch made us profitable, right? Like,
Oh my
that,
god.
like
The early access made them profitable. How in the fuck, bro? Jesus Christ. It was $30 to get early access. Well, technically you could spend $480, right? But that's crazy. They are profitable already. Jesus Christ. So, okay, wait a second. My brain is kind of... Wait, hold on. How the fuck are they profitable already? That is insane. Yo, so... How many games are profitable in early access? I'm just like thinking about this, right? Because so a lot of fucking companies has been saying lately that $70 for a game isn't enough, and that's why they have to like fill it with microtransactions and all of this bullshit. But if they can be profitable with this amount of content in their game, with this big of a game, with all these things in the early act, that is insane. Well, the way I'm looking at this now is that either they are just a unicorn and doing everything right, and everybody else is doing everything wrong in terms of development and stuff like that. Because like if you look at what was the name of that fucking company? Concord. They spent $400 million on the game, and they immediately had to close their doors because it was so shit. Like, how in the fuck? That's crazy. There's something completely out of touch with these other companies, like Ubisoft, like Activision, like there is something wrong with what they're doing. There is. Well, I technically got. I am now that I'm thinking about it. I know what's wrong. It's because Bobby Kotick he has to get billions of dollars out of the company in order to be the. That's how the amount of money is being spent. Is because the investors and the board members are sucking everything out of the game in terms of value, and there's not a lot left over for the developers to use to make the game good. That's why we are seeing so many games fail 100%, and this is why they are so successful, because it feels like, to me at least, it feels a bit like Jonathan isn't pulling out 100 million from the fucking company to put in his own account. You know what I mean? He's spending the money that the company makes on making the game better, and not necessarily just filling his pockets and running to the bank, right? I am impressed. That is impressing as
like in terms of it paid off the development costs for sure. So you know we're perfectly fine there. I guess you're probably thinking about the fact that you know in America development budgets have ballooned very significantly. There seems to be sort of issues there. I guess that's sort of a problem that you know I guess would be specific to America. I would say because the rest of the game development industry and the rest of the world, I don't think is having that same kind of concern. So yeah, you know it was a.
That's why China is going to destroy American video game companies.
I was sort of curious. Why do you think you have such a good grasp on your cost to profit ratio?
Because he's not filling his pockets running to the fucking bank.
Or like why. What helps?
I don't think it's necessarily. I mean, okay, so California obviously has very high salaries relative to other countries, but I mean, I would say New Zealand's pretty much in line with the rest of the world as far as salaries go, like outside of that. So I mean, salaries is definitely a part of it. But the other thing as well is we try to be a very efficient company, right? Like we try to lower the bureaucracy. We haven't, got multiple levels of middle management and things like that. We just, try to
Yes,
keep
that's
things
where
slim and lean
the
and
money
efficient.
disappears, man.
And it's sort of interesting because something that happens to us is that for a lot of people, our company is their first job. And so at some point, they'll decide for whatever reason they want to leave and go to another company. And a lot of the time when that happens, they have an awakening of like what other companies are actually like, because they sort of assume like they'll be in our company and then they'll see and they'll often think, oh, it's so inefficient that this is happening or that is happening or whatever. And then they go to another company and they realize actually GGG is very efficient relative to a lot of other companies.
Right.
It's something that I kind of take pride in, but it's also a source of frustration for me a lot of the time because, like this is something I care a lot about. And so anytime there is any kind of thing, which is like I can
Now
see
that's the
bureaucracy building
difference.
up, it kind of, goes, I have to get rid of that, So like
He
it's kind of a
cares.
constant
He
thing where I
actually
just
cares for
constantly
us
have to be
and the
fighting
game.
against it because it's as I said, something that just builds up in companies over time, and we're getting bigger, right? Like we're over 200. I think we're about 210 at the moment. Like some of those things start to pile up, and like you start to run into scaling issues. So I'm really hoping we'll be able to keep our kind of lean approach, because I do think it's a huge part of why we're able to create content efficiently and deliver quickly.
What was your favorite
I
piece
was
of
actually going to
coverage
ask that,
about
but
Path of Exile 2 that's come out since it's
like
launched?
how big the
Besides
team is.
mine, of course, because mine has been pretty great.
Honestly, I have a hard time picking one. It's like like it's actually bad because when the game came out, I was like watching so many YouTube videos that it actually started some kind of YouTube addiction that
Oh
I had to like
shit!
actively get rid of, because it's like I was just constantly like maybe doom
Has he
scrolling is the
been
wrong
looking
word
at
because
my
most of the coverage was
videos?
good, but I was constantly just like checking, oh, what new videos have been posted. And honestly, it's good on some level to see that stuff because you're finding out what people, what people's feelings are. But on the other hand, there can be too much of that, right? Like you do need to actually stop doing that and actually just make the game at some point. So I don't know what I would say was the one that I enjoyed the most. Honestly, it was just great just seeing so many people enjoying the game. And probably the thing that I enjoyed doing whenever I watched a new piece of coverage was going to the point in the video where they where they fought like bosses for the first time and just seeing the reaction to skills and things like that. That's like kind of my favorite thing, of just the surprises that people get. It's probably my most entertaining thing.
Yeah,
Hell yeah!
that's really fun
Just
to
the fact
watch.
that he's
Speaking
actually
speaking of fun stuff to watch in the game, you
that he
treated us
is
to another cinema.
just the fact that he's actually diving in to the player base, checking it out, and feeling the consensus of what we are seeing is so smart for a leader to do. It's so smart. That's where Ubisoft has failed tremendously. They haven't listened once to their community. Whenever we have complained about stuff, whenever we have said this is unacceptable, this is so bad, this needs to change, this is like, you know what I mean? They haven't listened. They just fixed the store and filled more mounts and more shit in the store, and then not giving a fuck about fixing the story missions so you could actually complete the game. Whereas it sounds like Jonathan has been literally, he said he had a YouTube addiction for a minute there. So he has actually been deep diving into the community, figuring out what we like and what we didn't like, and that way changing stuff to fit what we want. That is, it's so easy to do because YouTube is available on your phone, on your iPad, on your computer, wherever the fuck you want to see it. It's such an easy tool to use as a developer to check if your vision is in line with the people playing the game. What the fuck, bro? Why is everybody not doing that?
Cinematic today
Mm-hmm.
during the reveal of the new content. We didn't get a ton of those in the game. We had sort of the water painting style thing that you did,
Right.
or etchings, if you want to call it that. Are we going to get more of those when the final launch comes?
There will be a couple more when the like proper cinematics when the final launch comes out. We've actually already made them, yeah, there's some more stuff like that that's coming. But I mean, look, fundamentally, we're not a game that's going to be constantly giving you like cinematics of that nature most of the time. The like we're a game you expect people to play through lots of times, so we try to be as engaging and immersive as possible, while also making it so that if you're playing it for the seventh time, that you feel happy about the fact you can just get past everything. It doesn't feel frustrating. So we're kind of like very careful to maintain that, because it's very easy to sort of break that and then immediately get to the point where it sucks to have to replay again, if you're too heavy-handed with that stuff.
Bro, that's brilliant. That's why they love Diablo 2. Diablo 2, you have your cutscenes at the end of every act. So when you kill an act boss, you get a cutscene and you continue to the next act, and that's it. And you can skip the cutscene if you want to, but the cinematics are made so fucking good that a lot of times you actually don't even want to skip them. Just even though I've literally, like, no lie, I've seen the fucking Diablo cinematics probably 10,000 times at this point. I have like over 100,000 hours in Diablo 2, right? So if it's made good enough, on top of that, if it's not every 2 seconds you have to fucking watch a cutscene or like see some kind of cinematic, so it obstructs the game, you know what I mean? That's how you want to do it with these type of games. You do not want to fill them with cutscenes, so you have to like sit there and fucking watch 10 hours of cutscenes going through the game. That's just not, it's not good. Like, I get it, like, but Diablo 4 had that problem, in my opinion. It was just more cutscenes than gameplay almost, and it's just not me, man. I don't mind the really good cinematic that is created to continue the story and give some kind of background to what's gonna happen now. That is amazing, but if it's every fucking waypoint you get to, you have to watch a video of some shit, like whatever, right? It becomes tedious. So very smart on their part to keep it Diablo 2 styled.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. I did a solid play. Well, because of the early access, you play through it, and then that character gets deleted in the preview event. So I pretty much have the first 2 acts pretty well memorized at this point.
Sure.
And it's still fun to go through because every class feels a little different. And today, the class you revealed was the Huntress. Now, way back in GDC, I want to say 2022 or 2023, you actually demoed the Huntress and the bear roll to me.
Yeah.
way back then. What sort of evolution has that character gone through since that first initial reveal of it way back then?
So it's funny because classes are one of those things which, it's like every time you add something, it can potentially cause you to revisit everything that came before it. And so
Right.
this is why they're the hardest thing to predict, like how long they're going to take to make and that kind of stuff. Like we thought we had kind of gotten the formula of the Huntress back then, and then later we found out we totally had not got the formula because we started adding new things and it just wasn't working correctly. Like we weren't able to add new things to that tool set and have it work out. So yeah, I mean, it's received tons of changes, but the thing that we keep on going back to, the thing that we try to make sure of, is that fundamentally what our goal is with each new class, when we add it, with each new class, we're thinking, what is the weapon type they're using, right? Even though they're not technically, required to use it, that is kind of like the primary driver. And so then with each weapon type, we're thinking, well, what is the thing that makes this weapon different than every other weapon type in the game in order to make it feel different? And so for spears, that is the fact that a spear is the only weapon type that you can use both as a melee weapon and a ranged weapon. So therefore, everything we do should be along the lines of how are we going to incentivize that type of gameplay? How are we going to make it so that that is the thing that can make this class feel different? So really it was just like, more things, like make sure that every melee skill, the combo piece you need for it is a range skill, and that every range skill, the combo piece you need for that is a melee skill, and then also add the tools for jumping back in and out of combat. And what that kind of leaves you with is a class that feels incredibly agile, which is good because it's a primary dex class. It should feel the most agile, and one that, yeah, as I said, feels very different from other things. So that's what we did. But as I said, the specific details of that have changed a huge amount since then. Like we had Whirling Slash, but we didn't have all the interactions with ground effects. We didn't have the frenzy charge stuff that we've done now, where every spear throw has a an interaction with frenzy charges. Even just from the point where you equip a spear on the beach, you now get both a melee attack and you get a default melee attack and a default ranged attack. to really just sell the concept right from the beginning of you should be using both of these. And then even the default melee attacks still can take advantage of frenzy charges because that is the rule that every single spear throw can use frenzy charges. So you're kind of just like building that in. And then I think the other thing that probably majorly changed since then was the parry. And this is one that I was actually very skeptical of. And like the whole time we were doing it, I was like, it's never going to work. It's never going to work. And the reason why is because parry in most games, the way it works is that you know, it's the classic thing of if you time the the block just at the right time, you do the parry, right? That's just like every game does that. And in our game, that just doesn't work because the attacks come in too fast. And you don't have enough time to follow up because, you know, you're being attacked by like 5 things at once.
Right.
And we're not going to slow down every monster attack in order to make parry work.
Oh.
So what we, like, Mark had the idea of, like, what if we changed it so that it's kind of the opposite of that? Like, you hold down the button and then it's the follow-up that you do in response to the parry that happens automatically that gives you the power. And in our game, it actually works really well. And so as soon as we got the feeling of that down, and, you know, we had, like, you know, you do the sound effects and you do all the, like, you know, get exact animation timing and just get everything perfect, suddenly it feels awesome. And that's actually changed how the class felt a lot. And then, you know, that I would say was something, yeah, definitely a revelation as far as the class feels go. So I'll be very interested to see how you feel about how parrying works. And honestly, one of the main things that it's also done is it's demonstrated us how bad blocking is on the warrior by comparison, because now we feel like we need to do a definite upgrade to that.
Right.
And my hope is we'll get that upgrade. We have a plan for this. My hope is we'll get it in for 020, but because it's not done yet, we haven't announced it yet. We've got one more week to make sure that happens. And if we can't do it, we won't do it. But yeah, I've got some plans for making one-hand warrior feel much better in this regard.
I have a pitch. Okay. Dual wielding shields. What do you think? No.
I don't know how that would work. I'm not sure what skills
works in Elden Ring. Just saying.
Yeah, but
I guess so.
That's a different type of game.
Yeah. One of the big gripes I had about Endgame, though, was the Ascendancy trials. I had a lot of difficulty, gonna fully admit, not a pro Path of Exile 2 gamer here, with the third one, and then obviously I didn't do the fourth one because I got stuck on the third one.
Well, one thing I'll tell you that we found yesterday, which, you know, as we're doing our big balance pass, is that the bosses in the Ascension trials accidentally had double the life they were supposed to have.
That makes a lot of sense.
That probably wasn't helping. It's a random thing. And honestly, it's surprising how often you can find random discrepancies like that. Like, I don't know. I actually haven't asked yet what exactly caused that, but for some reason they just had double the life than what we thought that they were supposed to be having. So yeah, that's just one random thing that you'll note. But yeah, so there'll be balance changes and so on. But
okay, so
fundamentally,
like
you know, the Ascension trials are still, you know, like they're still the same thing that they were. But you know, ideally, we've just found the balance problems and improved on them.
Yeah, initially,
I'm happy to hear
as
that.
you know, armor wasn't quite working as intended, and I had an armor build, so it did not go well for me. I was just waiting for it to be patched, and I'm excited to try it again with a new class. You brought up Asmerian Wisps today?
Asmerian Wisps, yeah.
What's your inspiration for it? It seems like it reminds me of stories I used to read when I was younger.
So it really comes down. So the Asmeri culture, which is who the Huntress is from, kind of has like a sort of Celtic kind of thing going on with it. You know, like we've got some of those elements. So that was definitely one of the inspirations, and just sort of looking at stories of that nature. But also mechanically, it's kind of a new take on a way to do a similar mechanic to something we did in PoE 1, which was Tormented Spirits. So there were lots of problems with that mechanic in PoE 1, and we kind of wanted to find a way to make that similar kind of thing, but with a new theme and a new like vibe and like better mechanics and so on to kind of like improve on that formula. And so one of the things, one of the reasons we chose that as a thing to do, in particular, other than the fact that it was nice that we could tie it in with the theme of the Huntress at the same time, was that we really want to try and improve in in-game the number of mechanics that can overlap with other things that are going on in maps and stuff like that. So effectively, like one of the things that sort of keeps people entertained in the long term in an in-game is making sure that you feel like you're coming across many new new scenarios you've never seen before.
Yes.
And I mean, we're adding about 40 new sort of like encounters, if you will. I mean, if you count all the different spirits types as different ones, they've got different mechanics to them. Like there's 40 new encounters if you look at it that way, or it's a little bit more than that actually. But the real strength comes from the fact that the focus on the ones we're doing this time are things that can be in existing maps, that can overlap with existing mechanics, that you get combinations of things you never saw before, that suddenly result in combat scenarios you never saw before. And it's that stuff that kind of keeps things engaging in the long term.
Right.
And the thing we've referred to this in the past as overlapping axes of randomness, because that's what kind of leads to the combinatorial explosion of different scenarios. And PoE 2's endgame was lacking in this regard. And we're going to do even more along these lines as we go forward. But this upgrade should be a pretty drastic improvement in the number of those things that can happen. Because, you run into a corrupted essence, and then that happens to be on a unique boss. And then, oh, look, the wisp happened to be there as well. And, then all that came together and then made this crazy new scenario of the interaction of these mechanics. And so that's kind of what we're looking at when we're trying to design that stuff.
You finally added the ability to resurrect NPC characters via the witch. What's the highest power monster that you're able to resurrect, and what's the average lowest?
So anything can be resurrected, and it's all just balanced with spirit costs. I mean, I have a feeling this is one of those things that, okay, so we've tried to balance this, but I am sure that people will find stuff that is crazy. I mean, like, it's honestly, as I said, we've kind of tried to make it so that things are, like, the spirit costs are relatively balanced. So it shouldn't really matter. Well, it'll matter, obviously, because it has to fit in your build, but it should be the case that it all should work out. But, I mean, obviously, you've got big monsters like I'm terrible with names, by the way. There's the big lizard thing with, like, a thing on its back that, like, those will probably be... People probably like those, but I think probably the other one as well is those guys from Freythorn that create the purple explosions. Like they're quite large area coverage, and like that's probably a pretty good one. But I mean, I don't know, there's all sorts of stuff, right? Like honestly, I've got no idea what people end up finding is the most broken of those things. And of course, the other thing we got out of it as well was beast taming, because the same work that we needed to do for the race Spectre also was useful for beast taming, which then of course lets you get rare monsters as well.
Sweet. What's the most broken thing your team has discovered so far, so that I can try that out?
Well, the thing is, if we find it, we probably nerf it, so
no.
We probably don't want to be talking about those ones. I mean, look, it changes every day, right? So, like, every day I go home, I do a playtest, I, try to work out, what is, like, too OP, or, like, what's not performing, that kind of stuff. Like, that's what I'm doing. So, it's hard for me to even say, like, at this point, because, it's just the constant iteration. And that'll just keep going right to the last minute, right? Like, we'll just be continuing to do that, because we always find more things. But look, I reckon that the twisters are pretty good. Like, especially the twisters with the ground effects. It works very well. It's supposed to feel powerful. It's quite a long combo chain, because there's a few different steps to it. So therefore, it's balanced to be powerful for that reason. I find it pretty enjoyable.
I will definitely try that out. Also, bleed builds. That seems really interesting. That seems like a lot of fun. Can you tell me any more about those?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so with Bleed is, obviously hunting themed, so we wanted to make sure we're adding a lot of stuff. There's a lot of new passive tree support. We've also got a Herald of Blood.
Quinn's going to be happy about
which will
that.
Make monsters that have been bleeding explode on death. We've got this new blood loss concept in the game as well. So effectively, you can see on the life bar as you bleed things, like a kind of like there's like a faded out section, which is like the amount of life they've lost to bleeding. And then we've got various different skills and mechanics that utilize, like, well, depending on how much blood loss they've got, it'll activate certain abilities or do more damage on this kind of stuff as well. So that's another sort of combo area of the Huntress as well.
You revealed that 3 new ascendancy classes are being revealed: Mercenary, Tactician, the Witch is getting Lich, and I missed one of them. Yeah, Smith of Katava. Yeah. And with Smith of Katava, you can spawn a living weapon that's animated to fight alongside you. Who came up with that's a cool idea. I really, really like that. Like, how do you come up with that, and then how do you implement it in a way that...
Oh, this is the guy who hasn't played PoE 1, eh?
I mean, that one, I mean, I'm pretty sure Mark was the one who wanted to do that, but we actually had a similar thing in PoE 1 where you could raise weapons as items off the ground, but it always had mechanical problems that we weren't really very happy with, so this was a way to kind of do it that was more that removed the kind of the frustrations that players had back in PoE1 with that idea. Putting on an ascendancy class, and then we're able to basically just realize the idea much more effectively. But I mean, fundamentally, when we're looking at the design of ascension classes, we often start with some kind of like, well, what is a cool fantasy of like a character, right? So like, it's actually normally the fantasy that comes first, and then we think of, well, what are all the different ways that we can, what would a person who was like this be able to do? So the idea of like of like a smith who worships like an evil god, was kind of like this the starting point, and they're like, well, yeah, exactly. So where do you go from there? Well, obviously they should be able to forge their weapon and their armor, and obviously they should be able to do other things with all sort of weapon and item related things is what they should be doing. That's kind of where it starts, and then you just brainstorm from there. And it really is the case with a lot of a lot of ascendancy classes. So the lich, for example, is right. Well, obviously a lich has to have a phylactery. It's like the number one thing about liches that everyone knows. So therefore, how is that going to be a mechanic in our game? What could we do with it? Well, we've got these things that socket into the passive tree. There's already kind of that idea of like, an item that's special. Like we can try to do something interesting with that. That's kind of it all comes from the theme when it comes to ascendancy classes.
And I do really appreciate that there's a lore reason for being able to equip that third ring. You sort of alluded to it in the presentation. I was like, that's nice. I do
wonder
appreciate
how
that.
I wonder how that third ring is going to interact with ingenuity, or if they're nerfing ingenuity or something. Because if they're not nerfing ingenuity, having 3 fucking breach rings with ingenuity sounds just a tiny bit broken, maybe, or like I don't know if it's broken, but it just sounds like there's potential for some crazy shit there. But yeah, it's hard to tell right now if that is gonna be a thing or not. We'll just have to wait and see when we get it.
Yeah, how do you balance something like that? Like having that third power, and it also like buffs everything. That seems like a really potent recipe.
It is. It is, and I mean, ultimately, every ascendancy class has like a power budget that we need to try and stay within, and then it's just a question of how we distribute that power budget among the different elements of the class. So sometimes these things can be, by like you obviously can add downsides in some cases. In other cases, you make it so that the point that leads up to it is weaker than to have a relatively stronger 4-point node. Like you just have to be able to think about, what's our power budget? What's the increase in percentage of damage that you should be able to get, or defensiveness you should be able to get from an ascendancy class? And like balance is possible to achieve, but always difficult. So
I don't think they're changing Blood Mage now. I think they're keeping Blood Mage the way it is, because it is a nerf when you get your first ascent for the Blood Mage, in terms of you having to spend life and mana to use your attacks. But the rest of the points are so strong that there has to be some kind of balance in there, and that is basically the balance, that you're getting a weak point to begin with, so you don't really feel like taking it early on. You're running through the campaign and then you take it. When you can do your second ascension, that's basically when you want to take it. I don't know if I fully agree with that, but I do agree that having a power budget for each ascend is the way to go, so they have a similar feeling in terms of how strong they are, but they are vastly different in how they perform, right? I think this is really smart to do it like that. So you don't have one class that's just running out of fucking, like, this just way out of hand, right?
We'll see what happens. I mean, the interesting thing is going to be, what's the breakdown of ascension classes, in 0.2.0. Like, we'll be able to get it more even than it was in early access's, initial launch. And the hope is that we can.
Jonathan, I believe PR said I had 30 minutes. I'm a little bit over, so I'll ask one last question. What's your go-to for lunch?
For lunch?
Yeah.
I actually don't eat lunch, funnily enough. I'm a breakfast and dinner only type of person. But for breakfast, I'll usually just grab something from the bakery, like sausage roll or something like that. It's a classic New Zealand thing.
Got it. I'll have to try that next time I'm abroad. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure every time we get to chat, and it was no different this time. I hope everything goes well with the new launch, and I'm looking forward to playing it.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Now, if you haven't seen it yet, Path of Exile 2 just had a massive live stream talking about this latest expansion and all of the changes. We were lucky enough to have a little bit of behind closed doors time with Jonathan to ask questions, and these were his replies. Now, as is tradition, there were issues with the audio. I swear, every time I interview Jonathan, I'm cursed with this, but I've included it here for your listening pleasure and cleaned it up best I could. Here we go.
All right. So now I'm here to answer
okay.
questions. So I guess the first question here that we've got in the chat is to do with interaction overriding things. That actually is something that was fixed, so that's sorted out. But also it's just worth mentioning that if you want, you can rebind which key the interact is bound to. It doesn't have to be bound to A, so you can change that if you like. But the particular case you're talking about, we did change the priority there. The next question was, do we have any plans to bind more than one keyboard key to an action, for example, potions or mana? The answer to that is I don't have any plans for it. It's kind of not really been something that I have to say has come up before. You can bind multiple skills to the action bar, but not generally other things other than that. The next question is, staying on the topic of controls, will we be able to switch between controller, keyboard, and mouse on the fly? The answer to that is yes. I actually did think we were going to get that into 020, but it didn't quite make it, but it will almost certainly be in for 030, because that is something we have had requested quite a lot.
Okay, that's good.
The next question is about what challenges we've encountered during PoE2's early access period. I guess probably the main thing that was kind of different than what we expected with regard to early access was that we sort of assumed that being in early access we would have more latitude to be able to make mid-league changes to balance, but that was something that people definitely didn't tolerate, even though it was early access. So we've sort of realized that we do have to actually make sure we're still using a kind of season-based model even during early access, because if we don't, then players just are not able to tolerate the kind of balance changes we need to make. So effectively what we've had to do is like batch up all our like big balance changes into and they'll go out with the season. So one of the big things that we didn't really talk much about in that video is that there's a full game rebalance in there that will kind of make it so that pretty much everything that you might think that you know about how the skills are balanced is all kind of changing around quite a lot, and that's something that will just change the meta very significantly.
Okay, so I was certainly one of the people who was very unhappy with them nerfing the cast on freeze situation on the early days of it. But I wasn't really unhappy with them change or nerfing it. I was unhappy that there wasn't any tool to then, or I didn't have the ability to respec my character and make it work with something different, right? Like I didn't have the option to change everything because I had just invested all my currency, all my gold, and everything into the character. So I was like sitting at like 30,000 gold or something like that. I can't fully remember what it was, and the respec cost was like 150,000. So basically what happened was my character was fully bricked, and I was no longer able to play just a T4 map, right? I was just doing T16 maps, and now I can't even do a T4 map. I can't respec my character. I can't do anything with it, right? Like it's just full on bricked. Like it doesn't work anymore. That was the part I got unhappy about, right? It was that there wasn't, you nerf it, but it's early access, and you didn't provide a way to kind of like, okay, this build is now gone. Let me just change everything and then try something new. There was no way to do that at that early stage. And then they decided to cut their respec cost with like 70% or something. And I had, at that point, I had already made a new character because I couldn't use the old one, right? Like the old one was bricked, so there was no point in even like trying to do anything with it. So I just made a new character, ran through the campaign, and then got back to endgame, and then basically started farming again. And then once I had farmed enough gold, then I respec my sorceress, into something different. I was trying a bunch of stuff, and then they cut the cost, and then I was like, oh, that's what you should have done when you nerfed it, because then I wouldn't have been unhappy at all. Then I would just say, oh, okay, I guess the build was broken and it had to get fixed, so fuck it, just fix it, because I rather want them to fix stuff that's overly broken, so you don't get used to that type of power level, right? Because it was fucking hella broken. I'm not gonna sit here and defend the cast on free situation, because that was fucked up. And my character was like, it was so insane at one point that it made literally the game flicker. Like everything was like looking fucked up. All the graphics was not loading right and stuff, because there was too many things happening at once, right? So, and we're kind of in that state right now, right, where there's a set of builds. 99% of them is cast on builds, whether that be cast on dodge or cast on freeze or ignite or minion or whatever it is. Those builds are so graphic intensive and what you call it, it makes your PC perform really badly. At one point, I was playing a game and I opened up my task manager, and because when you open your task manager, you can see how much percentage of your CPU, of your RAMs, and everything you're using, right? And it just said on everything, it said 98%, 99%, 98%, 99%, 98%. You know what I mean? And I like the game looked fucked because of how much shit was happening. I was playing with like a witch that had like some kind of automated cast on whatever the fuck that was. I don't know actually what it was he was using, but he was like there was comets coming everywhere, and like it was, and there was not one, there was like three of us that was using those type of builds in the same game or in the same map. It just fucked my PC completely, and I don't think that's the idea with the game, right? Like they want, as I said, they want to have meaningful combat. And meaningful combat would mean, in my opinion, that you have to think about what you're doing. You can't just sit there and watch a video and not look at the screen, because everything is automated and happening. All you do is pressing forward and holding down a button to kind of like spawn whatever. That is not meaningful, right? Because now you're not even paying attention to what you're doing. Whereas if you're playing and that the power level is more equal to the monster level, if you know what I mean, like the feel is that you have to pay attention to what you're doing. Of course, at the very true end game, when you have like mirror tier items and stuff, of course you should feel a little bit more freedom there. But I think that it should be so. It should be the way where you actually have to pay attention to what you're doing. You can still have like Netflix on the second screen or whatever, but you can only really listen to it and maybe peek it a couple of times, right? In between monster packs and stuff. But once you're in a fight, you have to actually pay attention to what you're doing. That's what I think they want it to be. That's what it seems like. And I do agree with that mentality, right? Like that's a better idea, because then you're engaged in what you're doing instead of just not paying attention at all.
So the next question that we've got here is about whether there's any plans to reintroduce some of the crafting currencies to allow players to access more advanced crafting options. Well, as you might have seen in the presentation, I think after the point we asked that question, we have actually reintroduced some PoE 1 crafting options, but there are also some that we would never reintroduce into PoE 2, and that's because we do want to make sure that we don't end up with a crafting system that feels overwhelming, especially from early game. We want to make sure that the crafting options are kind of, start to become more advanced as you get into the game, but also we have to be incredibly careful to prevent things that would devalue items on the ground from dropping. One of the big issues that we have in PoE 1 is that ground items are like incredibly valueless, which is definitely not a problem that PoE 2 has. But if we were to there are certain changes to crafting that if we did them would effectively mean that nothing on the ground would even matter. So I think that that's something that we should try and really avoid.
I do agree with that too, because in PoE 1 the top end of crafting is so convoluted and so hard to figure out exactly what you want to do to gain certain like recombinators is actually my favorite way to craft in PvE1 because it's simple, it's easy to understand, it doesn't come with like a ton of rules that you have to know and understand in order to make it work. Whereas there's a lot of the other crafts that comes with like a shit ton of rules, and you have to sit there on a third party website and figure out which is the best way to fucking craft my item, because if I use an Exalt instead of a whatever, it's gonna cost me 10,000 divines instead of 1,000 divines, right? Like, and it's just, that is too much for me. I do like that they have that at PoE1 in terms of now, because it's a 13-year-old game. I think it's fair that you have moved into that point now to keep giving us something new every season when it comes to PoE1. But if you start out PoE2 in the same exact manner, you're gonna drop a massive amount of your players that are new to the game because it becomes too convoluted. There's just too much stuff to learn. It's already a lot of stuff to learn if you're a new player. And I think if you haven't been in playing Path of Exile 2 from early access and you joined once it's full release, there's going to be so much to learn. It's going to be hard to keep up with the people who have already played the game for a year. It's going to be really hard to understand a lot of things early, and that might wing off some people, right? Because it's a little bit too convoluted. So I don't think they should go that route of introducing like beastcrafts and what are they called? Like influenced items and fucking Jesus Christ. There's so much in PoE1 in terms of crafting. It's just it's endless almost, right? Like there's so much stuff you can do. It's kind of wild. So I do think that they're better off taking that part a little bit slower. Don't do it slowly so we don't have no crafting options, but do it in a way so people get to learn everything in full launch, and then start adding a little bit more of the maybe like more complicated crafting methods. But don't do it early on because it's gonna be too much for new people. I'm pretty sure that would be too much.
Yeah, next question is about will spares be available on other classes? So in our game generally, you don't we don't restrict any weapons to particular classes. Really, the purpose of the class, I mean, it provides you a starting point where you're going to find a lot of relevant skill points on the passive tree, but it also provides kind of a stereotype that players can then look to in terms of how they're going to build their character. You know, you start off with a spear, you're very likely to keep using spears, but you can technically use them on any class, and due to our weapon swap system, you can combine a spear build with another weapon type if you like. Like people do build weird builds like that, so yeah, technically any class can use them. And the other thing as well is with our Ascendancy class designs, we often try to make sure that the Ascendancy classes have like an obvious way that you would use them, but also there's no technical restrictions on how you can use them. So
Right.
we don't reference specific weapon types in our Ascendancy classes. We keep them open in ways, like even, for example, if you look at the ones that we have on the Huntress, you'll notice that there isn't anything that references spears there at all. It's all talking about projectiles and things like that. Like, we try to keep things generalized so that they can have a wide variety of applicability.
That's
The next question is,
so
regarding
smart.
balance, can we expect frequent adjustments throughout each new league, or will changes arrive on a fixed schedule? And there's a growing sentiment in the community that the game is being treated more like a full release than early access title when it comes to balancing. So this is 100% correct. And as I said, we got heavily punished when we tried to treat it like early access with regard to making balance changes. Like people got incredibly angry in the first couple of weeks. So therefore we just said, no, we can't even do this. We do actually have to be doing balance changes only when you have seasons. And I think it probably will work better in the end anyway, because it will mean that we will have a it's a good chance to start again. And honestly, balanced feedback from a perspective of someone who's already got a full character is actually mostly irrelevant. Like, you do need balanced feedback only from people who've started again, because the balance in the early game influences your choices towards the late game, which sort of influences how you feel about your character. Like, if you just walk into the game after a balance change and then your character has been nerfed, you'll tend to just feel negative about that regardless of anything. So ultimately, I don't think that that was ever going to work. We kind of have to make balance changes when there's also an expectation of starting the game again.
Right.
The next question we've got here
I don't
is
think it's,
one of the interesting things about...
I don't think that's completely unfair, but I also think that there are, of course, certain broken things that should just get nuked immediately when they come out because it's too much. It either because it like fucks with the servers, and then basically when it fucks with the servers, it's affecting every single person who's playing on that server. I know that was a massive issue at one point because we were like getting kicked off constantly from people using specific combinations of skills that would literally break the servers and kick everybody off, and that part is not good. So I do think they need to nerf certain things, even though it's mid-league, if it's like outrageously broken and fucking with stuff so you can't enjoy the game. But that being said, I don't think they should do massive overhauls and nerf like the whole lot, you know what I mean, until they have some content to go with it. So that way it feels like you're going into it with a new mindset, and you're expecting to play something that's not what you just did. You're expecting to play something new, basically. And I do think that's the better choice to go with. It'll make the 2-3 months you have to play before the next thing comes out feel more enjoyable than if you're just like every 2 weeks you're nerfing shit. But as I said, I do think they need to nuke some of the broken shit.
being in PoE2 about is that we get to see ascendancies periodically added to the game. However, players might feel during early access that something more appealing shows up. Will there be a way to change ascendancy in the EA, or will players have to re-roll? You will have to re-roll, and it's exactly for part of the reasons I just said. Like, it's important to actually get balanced feedback from the beginning of the game. If you just change your ascendancy from one to the other, you're not going to really build your character properly. So, it's something that we just think is ultimately better to not be able to change something like that. Next question we've got is I've seen some players who don't have access to high-end PCs complaining on Steam about the game's performance, especially at endgame. Can we expect significant changes in the game's optimization with Dawn of the Hunt? So what I will say is that we've been making optimizations kind of in the last month or so to the game, but there's still a lot more to do. I have no doubt by the time that the full release comes out that the game will be incredibly well optimized, but unfortunately our engine team has just had a lot of work, working on engine crashes and things like that. We had this really annoying NVIDIA crash that's been plaguing us, that we've had 6 people dedicated just to trying to fix that for the last 3 months. There's just it's been a bit of a hassle there, but certainly we've added metrics to the game to be able to see, for example, what skills are the ones that are causing performance problems, this kind of stuff. We'll be working on it, and there's a lot of just individual cases. So I have no doubt that the performance will improve, and by the time we get to full release, I'm sure that things will be incredibly fast and optimized there. Next question is, any plans to improve the controller experience, such as better skill aiming systems? So we have already in the last few weeks some changes to how aiming works on controller. So if you haven't tried that in the last few weeks, I'd suggest that you give that another go. So that already did help quite a lot, but a lot of it comes down to just individual skills. We're still working on it. There's been a lot of changes. It is definitely something that we're working on all the time, that the controller guys are constantly focusing on trying to improve.
That's something I just talked with my very good friend about. Shout out to Ricky, because he's playing PlayStation 5, right? And as he said, the playing with the quarter save and the bell on a controller. This is of course before they changed it, because he did say they did make a change that made it a little less painful. But what the problem was that your character gets super horny for something. Like if you put down a bell, it just won't fucking attack an enemy that's somewhere else. It'll just automatically go for the fucking bell every time. And or like you're trying to attack one enemy and it just randomly swaps to another enemy, and then it just decides to lock onto that guy, and now it's like you can't, basically you can't get away from him. You can't attack the other guy you want to attack, because it becomes like super locked in on something. And he did say they changed it, so it's not nearly as bad now as it was early on. But that was certainly an issue with controllers that was like major, that it kind of like got locked in on something and then it wouldn't let go almost. So, but yeah, as he said, they're improving that majorly over the next period of time, and expect it to be feeling a lot better once full release comes. Like that's when they are gonna be having everything sorted out in a way where it's gonna feel way more smooth. Because if you think about Path of Exile 1, it does feel very, 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 very smooth in most scenarios, right? Like it does not feel super fucked up.
That, and it really just the devil's in the details. The next question is there any work being done to improve the Ascension trials? I mean, I don't know that there's anything specific that I would list other than just the fact that it's included in our balance pass. Like as a random example, I know that, we found a couple of days ago that the bosses at the end of the Ascension trial had more life than they were supposed to have and things like that. I mean, there's just little balance changes like that, but I don't think that there's no like kind of large overhaul of the Ascension trials being done in Dawn of the Hunt in any case. Next question is there any plans for an in-game auction house? I wouldn't say that there's a plan for an in-game auction house exactly, but there are changes to trading that I am keen to make. I don't have anything to announce at this point, but there's definitely something that I want to look into doing more of during the early access period. So there'll be something.
I truly fucking hope when it comes to trading that they do something that's gonna kill off all the price fixers. Because there's nothing more annoying than people price fixing something to try and fucking greed their way into some currency from other people and cheat, or like make somebody sell something that is not way too cheap, right? Because they put up something for sale that they will never fucking sell. Like they put it up for sale at a price that's way too cheap, and they're getting like hammered with, they just put the like do not disturb on, and then they don't have to like deal with it, right? Like they don't have to deal with the invites, and they just have like thousands of people try to buy the item constantly. That is one thing I hate, bro. I hate stuff like that. I hate botting, I hate cheating, I hate people who are just dirty fucking disgusting ass people who just don't have any morals or good intentions, right? Of course there's plenty of those people out in the world, where in every fucking aspect of life, right? But I just dislike it so much. I hate it. I really hate it. Oh my god. I always try my best to be extremely fair and to be extremely helpful and to be not greedy on stuff and whatnot. Like I try my best to always be like that, because I feel like that provides a better experience for everybody who interacts with me, right?
And we definitely want to test there. The next question is how many more content updates such as Dawn of the Hunt are being planned before the game leaves early access? Well, the answer to that is that we want to be doing them every 3 months, and it is still our intention to attempt to get the game out in 2025. It's possible it would slip, but that's still kind of our goal. So effectively, it's going to be however many 3-month periods we have between now and then. Now, one thing that I will say, though, is that we also are planning on doing more smaller updates between the beginning of between the release of Dawn of the Hunt and the next update as well, just because we didn't really do so many of them for 010, and I think that we can probably do a few more things there. Not so much like content, but just more quality of life improvements and things like that. So we'll probably do a little bit more of that. There was like various disruptions that sort of led to the point where that we weren't able to do too many of those. So ideally we can do more. The next question is how are you and the team doing?
AKA Young and Rue has been fucking with the servers too much, so they had to fix that first before they could make some improvements. Fuck's sake. Them boys be fucking crazy though.
Enough sleep, work-life balance, good. So actually, before early access released, we, we had a pretty terrible overtime, situation where like, things had gotten really bad and people had kind of gotten used to working overtime all the time. And so we actually, as soon as that launch happened, we just set a policy in the studio of nobody is getting to work overtime voluntarily anymore. It's like we're just cutting it all out. And we actually had a huge amount of complaining because like, there are tons of people who are like, oh, but I want to finish this and I want to finish that. And we actually had to take quite a firm stance about it of we're not going to actually be allowing overtime for a while because we actually need to detox on overtime as a studio.
Smart.
Like it's bad if you kind of get into the habit of doing it because it will
Yeah.
just get worse.
And it'll burn you
It
out.
was quite painful because we had so many people coming to us of like, I need to work these extra hours, etc., etc., and we just basically had to say no, we're not going to let it happen. Now, obviously, just before the launch, the last couple of weeks, we're kind of approving certain things again, but basically, yeah, we just wanted to make sure we didn't get into a bad habit because it's so easy to do that. I guess that's just a random inside baseball thing about that. So the next question is, how's the player engagement with Path of Exile 2 after 4 months? So, obviously, like, retention for this compared to previous PoE leagues has been incredibly high. The like higher than a normal league, but ultimately we are still a seasonal game, right? Like the expectation of a player is that you play the game for a month or maybe 2 months, and then you probably quit, and then you come back and then you play the next season. So one of the key things with this season launch is going to be like we've got a bunch of new players. They're not necessarily used to that kind of model. Like kind of getting them to the idea that every 3 months you re-roll, you create a new character, you play through the new content, and then you don't have to kind of burn out on it, right? Like you can just eat your fill, leave, come back later. There'll always be new content for you. So this one's going to kind of be an interesting one to sort of because the player base has expanded so much and not necessarily everyone is sort of understanding that message. Because I think a lot of game companies, they kind of try more the approach of like they drip feed content continuously to try and keep people playing forever, which is just not what our model is.
Bro,
So
this man is on one right now. Talk about that, right? Like, let's talk about that real quick. Drip feeding is the worst invention ever, in my opinion. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. One massive fucking problem with GTA was the drip feed. So they would say, oh, we have 10 new cars and this and this and this coming. And then you have to spend fucking 10 weeks waiting for that shit because they have to, oh, you get 1 car per week. But what that really does is, okay, I'm just not going to play for the next 10 weeks. I'm going to wait till everything is out so I can go in and get it all at once instead. It just does not work. It does not work well. It works for a little bit, and then people get so burnt out because who the fuck wants to sit there and play for a week with nothing to do, really, just to wait for one new thing to come in the game. And then you get the new thing, and you're like, oh, it wasn't so nice, so now I'm like, discouraged from keep playing. Bro, that's one thing I really dislike about GTA is the drip feed. I hate it. I think they should just release their updates with everything day one and let people go wild. And yeah, you'll have it drop off, but that's a good thing because then when you release the next thing, it's going to bring even more people because everybody's going to be like, yo, that last update was so fucking sick. Everybody I know, come over here and play this with me because this is super, super sick. And I promise you this is going to be like crazy because the way they do the updates, you get like so much stuff and so much opportunity to do different things. Whereas if you drip feed it over fucking 2 months, like a new player or like, not a new player, sorry, a player who's played the game for a long time is going to get fucking bored quickly. So I think that's a very smart choice on their
overall,
part.
like as I said, retention is higher than the past. It'll just be the real question though is always like how many people come back for the new launch, and then how many people come back for the launch after that. As a side note, I totally expect that 020 will have a smaller launch peak than what 010 had, and that's just because you've got a bunch of people who tried the game for the first time. They're not necessarily going to come back. So, but the true test is going to be how 030 does. So, 020, it's just a question of what percentage comes back, but it'll almost certainly be lower. And then with 030, hopefully then we're growing again. So that's kind of how I expect things to go. But that'll be the test of sort of, how successful PoE2 is. The next question is, have you seen any positive results given the new overtime directive? I mean, I would, as I said, it's not really a question of positive results per se. It's just a question of making sure that we don't burn out the team, right? So, like, the positive result is people not leaving, which is obviously something that, and like not getting burned out and not having these issues. Yeah, I mean, our retention as a company is very good and, always has been. I was just seeing, it was getting a bit scary with regard to burnout. So that's the reason why we had to do that. Next question is, could we see a full release as early as 2025? So I am very much, like trying to get that to be the case. Like it's definitely like my intention to try and do that, but it could slip. I'm not going to completely discount the possibility. I have a schedule that will get us there by the end of 2025. It's just that sometimes you don't meet every schedule, and I'm not going to promise anything at this point, basically. But as I said, that is my intention. That's the schedule I'm going to try and keep. We just you always try and do as good as you can. Plans for new acts? Absolutely. So there will be 6 acts by the time the game goes into early access. One question a lot of people have is,
Launch.
are you going to be releasing one at a time? Are you going to have them at full release? My current belief, and we can still change this, my current belief is that we'll probably put them in one at a time, which will cause a few funniness things around like how the progression of the game goes. But I think it is important to test that stuff because it's very difficult to really get people to really finish things until the point where it's actually going to be released. So I suspect that would actually cause the game to take longer to come out and if we didn't release the acts one at a time. The next question is...
Okay, so what I'm hearing here is, since he said the real test would be 3.0, if they're growing, right? So I'm thinking, this is how I'm thinking, since we're not getting an act for 2.0, we're getting one in 3.0, 4.0, and 5.0. So I think that's how they're gonna do it. So they're gonna like bring out an act for each next update, because then they have had time to cook it up, along with like other new stuff like ascends and maybe characters or weapons or whatever it might be. And that's why he's saying like the real test would be 3.0, because if you're bringing in a new act and if that pulls in even more people, then you're proving your track record and you're like growing and you're showing how the success is going to be come release, right?
Do you have any plans to make a version for macOS? Yes, we absolutely do. I have... it's currently running on macOS, but I don't think we were going to officially launch it for 0.20 yet, and I think that's just because we hadn't really had a time to really optimize for that yet. Yeah, there's a version working on macOS right now internally. We just need to get it to the point of actually being good enough and like getting testing for it and everything. So I don't think it was quite ready for 0.20, but almost certainly 0.30 will have macOS support.
L to the Mac gamers.
But, this seems like it's probably going to be the last question, so thank you guys very much for, unless we get a couple more. Thank you guys very much for for coming, and hopefully you enjoyed what you saw, and hopefully we'll see you again for the next for the actual launch of the game, and also potentially for the next update as well. Also, my favorite question today, I don't know. That's honestly a hard one. All right, so we've got another question here. The addition of more gym skills will increase that. Were there any new combos that were enjoyable, successful internally that you could highlight? Okay, so probably my favorite combo for the Huntress is the stuff with the ground effects, where you suck it into the tornado and then can fire at other tornadoes. It makes for a really long combo chain where 2 parts of the combo chain are actually the same skill, and that's something I actually want to try and repeat again in the future, because it was quite fun. Like sort of like have a skill that combos into like several other steps, but then has the same skill back in the combo again later. So
right.
That's kind of a fun one, and that's probably what I'm enjoying the most. So yeah,
kind of like
Tekken. Thank you very much for coming, guys, and always have a good time doing these press tours. So,
07 Jonathan, man.
Hopefully you enjoy the game as well.
Fuck yeah, brother.
This interview is brought to you by people.
I love that. That was an amazing interview. Holy. Shout out to this guy for putting us on this interview, Dustin. Brother, that was amazing. There's so much fucking information. Oh my god, bro! How many other companies does the fucking lead game developer sit down and just spill the beans on how the things are and they're gonna be? Like, I just don't feel like that's something we see a lot from any places. So the fact they're doing this and keeping us informed, keeping us understanding what the visions are, it's so smart. It's so smart because it keeps us engaged. It keeps us feeling like they're actually doing something to change up everything and make it more enjoyable. I'm, for one, extremely excited for this new patch. And even more so, I am so excited for the full release of the game. Holy, that's gonna be insane. I do think this might be a generational game. I think this might become like Diablo 2 was in some ways, right? So what I mean by that is it's now like 20 years ago they put out Diablo 2 and people are still playing it daily, religiously, every day, like it was a new game that came out yesterday. Even though there's been no new updates for it forever, and they haven't done anything to Diablo 2 Resurrected or Diablo 2, right? Like, people still play it. And if they don't play that, they play the Project Diablo or one of the other mods that just made the game even better, right? And the thing that's really sad to me is that Blizzard doesn't sit down, look at these modders who creates insane things for the game that's 10 times better than how it is. Why the fuck are you not hiring these people, paying them off, and utilizing everything they've made? Like, that's just stupid. You're getting free content. You're getting free ideas. You're getting free everything. And you can, all you had to do is pay them a little bit to then own the ideas and own the fucking content and then put it out and make it so everybody is happy. Like, I don't get it. Blizzard are stupid. They're stupid, man. It's sad. GGG is doing it right. I'm sorry, but I'm sorry for shitting on Diablo because it's still my favorite game of all time in terms of what I've like. I grew up with it, right? Like, I started playing it when I was like 13 or 12 or 13 years old or something like that. Like, maybe I was even younger. I don't fully remember. I started playing it and I played it daily for so fucking long, for so many years. I played it on a daily basis, right? Like, maybe not like 10 hours a day or anything, but like I played it like for an hour or two at least every day, right? And I think this game might end up in the same category where over the next 10 to 15 years, you'll just see this become more and more and more popular, and it will be one of those things that we can look back on and say, wow, they really fucking made something major here. Like, this is crazy, right? Like, I personally think that's where we're going with this, because this base we have right now for Path of Exile 2, just a base of it, as I said, it's still only like 40% of the game, right? Like, the new update here is bringing like 15% or 20% more of the game in, so now we have like 60% of a game, and then over the next couple of updates, then we'll have like almost 100% of the game, and come full release, that'll end up being like 100%, hopefully, right? Maybe there's missing a couple of things and we won't even be 100% at release, but at least most of the things are in there, right? So yeah, I am impressed, man. I am super impressed. Shout out to Dustin for putting the video up and doing an interview. That's actually really, really good. And shout out to Jonathan for just like being honest and open about everything and explaining it in a way that we all understand. And yeah, man, I love this. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, show some love to this man because that was amazing. That was fucking amazing. I cannot believe it. I love you guys. Hope you have a good day, good evening, whatever it is for you, and I will catch you all in the next one.